So in terms of, I want to bounce back on the accountability issue. We were talking before about the DAPP courses.
Yeah.
We talked in a sense about the micro accountability of Cafcass, the social workers, and the inability to give them feedback. When we hit the issue of the DAPP courses, how are these being recommended? I mean, what are the official criteria for a government-approved course?
I don't know that there are official criteria for government approved, but an organisation of charity called Respect seem to have taken that to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the things which they approve are the things which are recognised and recommended or required by Cafcass, I think would be the right way of saying that.
So how is this? This is a Respect. It's an independent charity.
Yeah.
Okay, and are they funded by Cafcass or the ministry?
They are funded to some extent for running a helpline for or for domestic abusers, which I think probably means male domestic abusers. So there was a time, I've not looked recently, but there was a time not too long ago when something like £370,000 was the amount of money allocated for the running of their helpline. Okay, that figure stood quite clearly in my head. They will then get funding from other sources, and they commission research into the so-called effectiveness of abuser programs. So they will be attracting money for those kinds of things. They were also attracting funding for supporting the organisations that deliver the work. So that would have perhaps been, so there was a London domestic violence support worker who was presumably funded by some government money from somewhere. So I think the answer is that they will attract sums of money from government sources and from independent trusts.
Right, and they receive this status within Cafcass. Is that a formal status that they have?
It's a kind of formal status, yeah.
Is it formal or not?
Well, the difficulty is that Cafcass will only advocate respect accredited programs, okay? And goodness, respect accredited programs. We've got to go back to the origins of Respect really to begin to understand that.
Sure.
So the people that are at the top of Respect emerged from the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, which is based here in London.
And that's under the Richmond Trust?
No, that's not under the Richmond Trust. No, the Richmond Trust I think have linked up with DVIP, but I don't think that they're part and parcel of it. Richmond Trust, they kind of, well, they might have, you might be right, they might have just recently linked together, so I'm not completely sure of that. But the DVIP were the first providers of domestic abuser programs in Britain, and essentially they'd gone to America and looked at the Duluth program, which is, you can say wherever you see the words power and control, that really means the Duluth program. Okay, so that was where they started. All violence then is instrumental by men to control women. That's the scene of it, and because it's all about male power and control over women, you obviously can't have courses for female abusers in that, despite the fact that 36% now of domestic violence is perpetrated by women, according to the statistics. Okay, still no female.
Domestic violence or domestic abuse?
They've been subsumed into one another in a way, haven't they? So I think the domestic violence is the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, and domestic abuse is sort of the wider range. And it's quite possible that domestic abuse, that title, has actually captured many more females in the thing altogether.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they started in a sense in DVIP. The research in 1998 by the Joseph Rowntree Trust established that there were large problems with dropouts. That problem has just increased when the probation service started their own program, which was IDAPP. Okay, so they had outsourced the work, and then they took it in-house essentially under IDAPP.
Yeah.
And then, so a new course was created, I would say, because of the shocking report from the Joseph Rowntree Trust inspired work. So that was recreated by the woman who is now in charge of Respect, okay? And that then became the guts of what is wanted to be accredited. The fact that only 25% of the men, or less than 25% of the men that attend the DVIP actually complete their 26-week course is a matter for real increasing concern, because the evidence says that those people that don't complete, that start but don't complete a program, actually represent a bigger risk than those that don't even start.
Do they have, what other alternative models are there to the Duluth model?
There are virtually none, okay? And if you think into CBT has been sort of mooted as a potential source of another way of approaching the issues. The evidence about CBT and the Duluth model have been virtually no difference in them, and very poor outcomes.
Even with CBT?
Yeah, even with CBT. You've got to think in terms of CBT as being not only short-term, but also semantically based, okay? So you're attempting to change the individual's thoughts.
Yeah.
Emotions come before thoughts, and direct thoughts.
Okay.
Okay.
So
so that was established in 1996.
What do you do that's different?
So what we're attempting to do is work first and primarily with emotional regulation. Okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So helping the individual to recognise the emotional state that they're in and they're getting into, and what are the signs in them that they are in an emotional state.
Yeah.
Because for many men, they don't recognise, and women, but you know, obviously our main clients are men. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many men just don't recognise themselves in an emotional state and wouldn't be able to tell you which emotional state.
Yeah, I have that problem. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
No. Seriously, it's like 5 minutes afterwards I can look back.
Yeah, that's
and I can
right.
say, look, I was really emotional then, but at the time I just
you don't have it.
Yeah.
No. So some of the things about this are really learning to recognise heart pounding, for example, head buzzing, for example. A guy we worked with very recently was, you know, when he was under stress, he was immediately rubbing his head like this and sort of holding onto his head, so that was the sign that the stress was going through. Other people report being weak at the knees. You'll see others that, you know, a sign for them is that they start jigging their legs, you know, and the individual, you know, maybe recognises I'm jigging my legs, for example, but they don't associate that with which emotion is being driven underneath all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is then, if we take the socialisation of men, or boys, okay, as we were just saying a little earlier, come on my little soldier, you know, so men are not supposed to exhibit fear.
No, that's true, yeah. Well, but not exhibit it.
But if your partner and all of your family is about to disappear and everything you've worked for is about to disappear, which is the emotion which is going on in you? Fear. Okay?
Yeah.
Men, by and large, also manage grief in quite different ways as well. So somebody says something which is hurtful to you, you know, as a bloke, I suppose, in a way. You know, I played rugby until I was 40. Somebody was having a bash at me about something. Well, the chances were I'd be wanting to have a bash back at him. You know, so somebody hits you. There's no sort of direct training, but you know, you don't take that standing up. You know, so the influence is you hit them back, which you can see on the international rugby almost any day of the week. You know, when people get a little bit heated, then what do they call it? Handbags, then, don't they? Which is the way in which we minimise things. But of course, men by and large don't recognise their hurts and don't recognise the grief. So how do they respond? Well, they respond with anger. So rather than, as we would describe it, doing fear, they do anger. Mm-hmm. Rather than doing grief, they do anger. Okay? So part of what we're doing is helping them to recognise fear states in themselves, hurt and grief states in themselves, so that they can focus on the emotional content of those feelings rather than just doing anger.
Do you feel